To be a movie fan today means that almost daily you're either looking up a movie's Rotten Tomatoes score or hearing other people talk about a movie's Rotten Tomatoes score. Even movie studios now will include Rotten Tomatoes scores in their trailers, TV ads, and posters. Well, that's if the scores are high enough. Now, some people in online movie circles will say that Rotten Tomatoes isn't actually all that important or relevant, but with around 100 million visitors per month, according to analytics company SimilarWeb, Rotten Tomatoes has actually become, for better or for worse, a vital part of the film industry ecosystem. Now, despite all this, there continues to be a lot of misconceptions about Rotten Tomatoes, how it works, and what the numbers actually mean. So let's take a moment to address 5 significant misconceptions about Rotten Tomatoes. Misconception number 1, Rotten Tomatoes gives movies a score. This is a misconception I personally come across multiple times daily from film fans. Many fans believe that Rotten Tomatoes actually gives scores out to movies, but this is absolutely false. Rotten Tomatoes never gives out a score to a film. Rotten Tomatoes simply reports what percentage of movie critics around the world actually like a film. So when you see that the 2014 movie John Wick has an 86% rating, that isn't Rotten Tomatoes declaring the movie to be an 86 out of 100. It's simply telling us that out of all the hundreds of film critics Rotten Tomatoes tabulates, 86% of them like the movie. So no, Rotten Tomatoes does not give scores to movies. Misconception number 2. Rotten Tomatoes only tabulates reviews from select professional film critics. This is also false. According to Time magazine, there are over 1,000 approved critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes, many of them are from top outlets like Variety, The New York Times, Entertainment Weekly, and others. But to ensure that a wide range of thoughts and opinions are taken into each film's score, critics from much smaller outlets or even blogs and YouTube channels like mine are included as well. Yes, you can see the ratings from just top critics on the site if you want to, but the general score includes a much wider range. Misconception number 3. Rotten Tomatoes scores define how good a movie actually is. This is one of the biggest misunderstood aspects about Rotten Tomatoes. A Rotten Tomatoes score does not tell you how good or bad a movie is. It simply tells us how many critics at least like a movie, not how much they like it. If we look at the John Wick example again, the Rotten Tomatoes rating of 86% does not imply that the movie is better than another movie that has an 82% or is worse than another movie that has, say, a 91%. The score simply gives you an implied probability of the chances that you may like a movie too. Because out of the thousands or so film critics, all coming from wildly different tastes and wildly different backgrounds and preferences, if say 80% of them like a movie, then the chances are pretty decent that you may like it too. But it doesn't imply that you will like it more than say another movie that has a 70% score. Misconception number 4. Rotten Tomatoes critic ratings are always different than the audience ratings. If you travel around online movie circles enough, you've heard people say the critic scores are always completely different from the audience scores. This simply is not true at all. Now, obviously, sometimes it's true. That's unavoidable with the subjective nature of film. But statistically speaking, the vast majority of the time, the critic and audience scores are within the same quarter of each other or within 25%, and often much closer than that. The Dark Knight has a 94% critic rating and 94% audience rating. Avengers, 91% critic rating, 91% audience. Top Gun Maverick, 96% critic rating and 99% audience. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, 97% critics, 91% audience. Yes, you'll also find films like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania with a 48% critic rating and an 84% audience rating, but these are in the minority. Misconception number 5. Rotten Tomatoes unfairly boosts the scores of Marvel movies. This is a common one. Maybe not specifically to Marvel films, although that historically has been the most popular accusation. But seemingly whenever a movie gets a score that is either better or worse than a certain group of people want it to get for their own agendas, accusations of rigging the Rotten Tomatoes scores always comes up. For example, there was once an instance where a critic reported that although he registered his review as negative, the Rotten Tomatoes system displayed it as fresh or positive. But the reality is that out of the millions of reviews submitted to the site over the years, there's only been about 3 to 4 confirmed examples of these irregularities, which statistically equates to non-existent. In terms of the specific accusation that Rotten Tomatoes has artificially boosted Marvel films, It should be noted that prior to 2016, Rotten Tomatoes was owned by Warner Brothers through their subsidiary Flickster. And since 2016, Rotten Tomatoes has been under the ownership of Fandango, which itself is owned by NBC Universal. So unless you believe that Warner Brothers was trying to give a leg up to their own competitors' movies over their own, or that Universal is doing so now, then we can just throw this one out. In conclusion, is Rotten Tomatoes the singular authority in determining if a movie is good or bad? No, it isn't, and it doesn't even remotely try to be. At its core, Rotten Tomatoes is simply a tool to help us get an idea of how many people like a movie and help us roughly gauge the chances that we may or may not like it too. It doesn't rate movies, it doesn't give out its own scores, and it doesn't try to definitively tell you if one movie is better than another. When looked at with a clear understanding of what it is and what it isn't, Rotten Tomatoes can be an extremely useful tool in helping us decide what movies we may or may not want to invest our time and money into, and it's also great for movie discussion. Well, that will do it for this video. I hope you found it at least a little bit informative and interesting. My name is John Campea, and I'll see you next time.